They sat long at the table with their wooden drinking bowls filled with mead. The dark night came on outside. The fires in the middle of the hall were built with fresh logs, and the torches were put out, and still they sat in the light of the dancing flames. Welcome to Biblioventures, The Hobbit, Episode 6, Chapter 7 of Queer Lodgings from the Rosenbach Museum and Library in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I am Edward G. Pettit, and returning tonight as co-host is Robert Berry. Welcome back, Rob.
Hey, so I was telling my wife today, shortly before you and I texted each other, that she was asking me what's different about you being on camera rather than being just in the chat each week, because I know you do that every week. What's different for you? And I'm like, well, we get to wear waistcoats and drink mead together.
That's it.
Said to me, it was why I responded in your text. She said to me, what isn't an opportunity for you and Ed to do that?
Well, I have designed my whole life around doing this. So,
Bravo.
so Westhu Hall.
Westhu Hall.
That's for those who don't know, that is Old English. It's like be thou hail, be healthy. I'm wishing you health with mead, which is absolutely great. What are you drinking, Rob?
So I haven't cracked the mead yet because before the show, Ed and I were having a rather serious and bookish conversation about what real mead really is. I picked up here in the wilds of Northeast Philadelphia, the only mead I could find, which is got a lovely name of Chaucer's mead.
Chaucer's mead. I've had it. Yeah.
But Ed was somewhat disdainful.
I was not. I'm just telling you what it is. It's sweet.
Threw some shade on the drink.
Like a dessert wine. I buy it sometimes and have it. So
it might not be a true mead. So I also therefore put some. It's been maybe decades since I've had mead, so I put some other Chardonnay by the wayside in the meantime, and I'll tell you when I crack the mead and what my.
Not having any Chardonnay. That's not an Anglo-Saxon thing for me. There's a Philadelphia mead company that I picked this up at, and it is absolutely and this is the Bochet version of it, which is a kind of mead. Bochet, it's a black mead. It's made by they caramelize the honey. We burn it. And then
adding more sugar and more alcohol content.
And then it's fermented. Mead is fermented honey, and this one is a little darker than usual. I have this just to show you in my Beowulf mead allowed glass that we had. We had a Beowulf mead allowed at the Rosenbach once, and we all drank mead that a local brewer made for us, and we read portions of Beowulf and some in Old English, and we had a harpist in the hall, and it was a lot of fun. And I love the mead, and I'm happy to be drinking it for this one. So let us know what you're drinking. If you ever have recommendations for me, please send them to email them to me or post them in our Facebook group or just post them in the chat right here. This Philadelphia mead is obviously made in Philadelphia, and it's a company that does a whole line of them. And I bought a few, and I'll be having some of them in other on other shows, and they do ship to over 30 states in the U.S. So I recommend it. This is very tasty. I haven't tried the other ones yet, but I really like this Bochet.
Ed, you kind of broke your Hobbit-like daily routine and actually went on an adventure in order to go into the city and get that mead, as you were telling me too.
I did. I had to go because it was only a certain location. We didn't have it shipped. I could have had it shipped early. I just didn't get around to it. And but I did. I went on an adventure and got my mead. Well, everyone, thank you for tuning into this episode. We bring our Biblioventures series to you for free, and there are many other Biblioventure series you can watch on our YouTube channel. If you'd like to support the Rosenbach through donation or by becoming a member, I would sincerely appreciate it. You can do this at our website, rosenbach.org. Your support helps us create programs like this and also care for our collections. And I would like to specifically thank the Wincoat Foundation for their support of Biblioventures. Our first American edition of The Hobbit was purchased with funds granted us by the Wincoat Foundation. The Wincoat Foundation's mission is to support efforts to strengthen and enrich culture, community, and the natural environment. And the Wincoat Foundation has been a friend of the Rosenbach for many years, and we thank them for their support. Our approach, if you're watching this for the first time, perhaps, is in this series, is to imagine it's 1937 or 1938, and you're reading The Hobbit without the knowledge of the rest of the Tolkien legendarium. The Hobbit was a standalone book for 17 years until Lord of the Rings was published. So the main focus of this is going to be talking about The Hobbit itself as a book in its own self. There will be a segment at the end of this episode called The Thane's Book, where we discuss aspects of this chapter as they relate to Lord of the Rings and the greater legendarium. And as always, no spoilers. We will not talk about later chapters of the book. Today, we only talk about what happens in chapter 7. So please keep to this in the chat as well, as you guys always do. So thank you so much. All right, Rob. Well, we have I have a lot of notes on this chapter because
Me too.
I love it's the Mead, it's the Old English stuff, it's all of that. And this is where I want to live. So and my pipe today, I have a very rustic pipe I'm smoking. This is a cherry wood pipe. That is even the stem is still it's a stick from the tree that they've made into the stem. So I thought I would get very rusticated today. So
Yeah, in preparing for this tonight, I think that I know that this is so much your chapter in a lot of ways. And what I wanted to also think about is how much this chapter to me feels very much like it's drawn from not only from ancient Germanic and Northern tales, but also from children's literature that was affected by those, right? So when we'll get to some artwork, which I know you always want me to bring to the picture, pun, but bring to the picture for that, we'll talk about how this chapter isn't as connected to the bigger Lord of the Rings narrative style, but there's also some tricks of the narratology in here that I find really engaging and interesting.
good.
So I'm going to want to hit on those a bit.
Bring those up when we get to them. Leading up to this, the company in chapter 6, the company has survived another dangerous encounter with goblins and the wild wargs. Then they're rescued by the eagles. Fly, eagles, fly. And then they have a dwarf barbecue. The dwarves have a little barbecue on top of the Eyrie, and Bilbo has that strange dream, which I found really interesting. And then in the morning, he wakes up, and is the next morning, Bilbo woke. Oh, I also do I have that here? No, I don't. Bilbo. The next morning, Bilbo woke up with the early sun in his eyes. He jumped up to look at the time and to go and put his kettle on and found he was not home at all. So he sat down and wished in vain for a wash and a brush. He did not get either, nor tea, nor toast, nor bacon for his breakfast, only cold mutton and rabbit. And that is also accompanied by a picture, a beautiful painting in the book, which is right here. This is in the book, and you can tell I'll closer up here. This is the eagle, looking pretty big here. Here's the Bilbo lying next to it here. I'll zoom in a little more. Note that he has boots on because he does have boots. this will crop up in a picture later too, where he has boots on, and Tolkien was like, "Oh, it's a mistake." But also, he did once say that he thought that he had given Bilbo boots when they visited Rivendell, but there's actually no proof of that. He just may have thought that he had done that, and then, but he never did. And but he did later think that Bilbo should have boots on the adventure. Early days developing the hobbits doesn't, necessarily need boots with the way their feet are, but this
Ed,
it's
Ed, while we're there, because this is like one of the better drawings by Tolkien of what a hobbit looks like. Can you zoom in more on him? So what's noticeable here is not just the boots, which is something he kind of went against later and made to be a very un-hobbit-like practice. But even the scale of the feet to the rest of the body, which is often distorted by other illustrators. And note the pointiness of the ears, which is
yeah.
something didn't really talk about very much and was asked very many questions about in the letters. So we're not going to go into all those questions, but ultimately I feel that this is one of the better illustrations by Tolkien that tells us what he thinks Bilbo should look like in form and in character.
Or at least early on too, because he does really develop this idea of their feet later.
Yeah.
And we also have to take into account too that Tolkien himself admittedly, was not very good at drawing human figures. So, you know,
And the scale of the eagle is such that you can totally believe that they could carry a couple of dwarves and a
yeah,
wizard like Gandalf on their backs with no
yeah.
problem.
And it's a beautiful picture. Painting, correct? That they have reproduced. And this eagle itself was inspired by a picture in a book, and there it is. I mean, essentially, he's just repainted this. This was from a book called Lord Lilford's Birds of the British Islands. I think the artist on this is Archibald. Yeah, Archibald Thorburn had drawn this, and one of his sons, I think it was, I don't know if it was Christopher or not, had brought it to his attention, and um, uh, and then he looked at the picture and painted his own eagle in its likeness. It is a golden eagle, um, and there it is.
Like
Steve,
the Audubon books, those are everywhere. But also go. So you've got this one up again. Go back to the other. Tolkien changed the light source,
interesting.
right?
Yeah.
So
And this one, there's obviously its prey is lying
whatever's left of it, yes.
under its claws. And here, Bilbo's lying nicely over here. Thank goodness he's not the prey of this, what would be a terrifying creature at that size to pick you up. I mentioned last time too, Rob, that Tolkien had nowhere in the text does it specify that they are this big. You just assume that they're big because they have to carry people, but he doesn't write them as like they're from Skull Island, gigantic, birds. So people were illustrating them like this one. Um, Now this was never published in a book because this is Virgil Finlay, right?
Yeah. I believe I posted this in the chat last week while you guys were on. I'm not sure how many people went to it or not, but Virgil Finlay is a super important American science fiction and fantasy illustrator, amongst the best of his age. And there was talk about him doing an American edition of The Hobbit. So he submitted this as one. I think there were other illustrations, but I've not been able to find them. Can you zoom on Bilbo?
little
That's where the
bit.
file I sent
This
you starts.
isn't the greatest file, but there we go.
You
He's
know,
down there on the left.
he didn't kind of Tolkien loved the energy of it, but didn't like the depiction of Bilbo that he sees there. Um, and I love this illustration because it's so dramatic, and the space of it is so baroque. Um, but is it a kid's book here when we see this, or is it
It's
bordering on something?
dangerous. It's dangerous looking, but sure. I mean, because there's danger in it.
There's a lot of danger in this chapter. There's a lot of things here that are like, whoa, you're spiking a goblin's head on your gate, man. So we will discuss those things, I'm sure. But um, this is a beautiful illustration by an illustrator that anybody who's interested in science fiction and fantasy would want to check out.
Now, Finley wanted to illustrate an American edition of Lord of the Rings and submitted this and another. And as far as I know, the other one I've never seen it. I don't know if it exists still, but
I've never found it.
yeah, and was and so was not hired to do it, and it kind of it was never published.
But yeah, the information in that illustration is great from an art history, you know, depiction kind of point of view, like the trees below,
Yeah.
sky above, the hollowness of the moon, all that stuff is it's perfect.
Yeah. Well, the rest of that opening paragraph, again, Bilbo still misses home. He still wishes he was there. He's still dreaming of it, wants to be there, always, because of course he does. Why wouldn't he miss his Hobbit life still? Um, he gets to go for another eagle ride, and you need to be he knows to be careful of what he says on the eagle. He's thinking, the eagle says, what is finer than flying, and he's thinking a warm bath and late breakfast on the lawn afterwards, but he thought it better to say nothing at all because they're not friendly, these eagles. They help, but they choose to help, not really helping because they're nice. um uh and I really like that portrayal of them in this, that they're
And can we take a second on don't pinch, said the eagle. You need not be frightened like a rabbit, even if you look rather like one. Because the rabbit things come up again and again and again. And a lot of comparisons are made between rabbits, which he never truly intended, but he found came out in his writing and sort of confessed to later.
yeah,
So I think it's really interesting because Bilbo just had a breakfast of rabbit. And I can't understand how a creature of that scale would ever bother picking up a rabbit, right?
yeah.
Like a rabbit won't fit into
Well,
those
it's
talons.
only
These
for
big
them
no
though,
major
perhaps.
animals.
It is just grab some rabbits for them, because they're the right size for it, but it would have been difficult, I imagine. They'd really have to
Exactly, right? No. Um,
for those giant
those
talons.
meat hooks? I don't think so. Yeah.
um yeah,
But
so there is.
rabbit folk comparisons between hobbits and rabbits will come up again.
Yes. Doesn't one of the trolls think he's a rabbit? Or yeah. So it's everybody seems to think Hobbit, you're like a rabbit because you're little, you live in a hole, obviously.
Yeah.
But yes, not the first time that will happen. Um we get a little Tolkien defining the landscape for us because he always does, either with drawings, paintings, or in his prose. He wants to tell us what this place looks like. The earth was much. There were trees that looked like oaks and elms, wide grasslands, a river running through it all, and then we get the picture that he describes of the Carrack, the giant rock that's there. Um, and a hill of stone. The I always thought Carrick was like I think I guess I read this at a time where I just thought, yeah, that's a thing, and I didn't realize that it's not really a thing. That I couldn't have gone to a dictionary and found it. Not that Tolkien invented the word, but he kind of uses an older word and related words for it, meaning this giant rock, stone, marker, either man-made or natural. Um, and this is where they deposit them. Although I love also, Rob, the exchange here. Because we always get these kind of ritual phrases. The dwarves are always at your service. That's that's the greeting that they give. And it always creates a kind of relationship, these ritual, sayings for greeting or farewell. And and the eagles say, farewell wherever you fare, till your Ares receive you at the journey's end. That is the polite thing to say among eagles. The narrator points this out. And then Gandalf answers, you can read Gandalf.
Sure. May the wind under your wings bear you where the sun sails and the moon walks,
Yeah.
answered Gandalf, who knew the correct
Who
reply.
knew the correct reply? So this is a ritualistic, thing you do with the eagles. And I like the way this all these things also explain relationships. That with the dwarves it's about, oh, I'm being at your service, and so I'm suggesting that there's at least some equality to us, and I will do something for you because I have now met you. It's almost like a feudal bond there
Well,
between
at
them. With
risking
eagles it's a little different.
what we know from from a chapter in the Thane's book and not wanting to expand on that further, I will say that the broad metaphors here of where the sun sails and the moon walks place their source of origin, just as they place their Ares
Hmm.
for the earthbound people, somewhere otherworldly.
Yes, they're above, beyond, other than people.
For readers of the Silmarillion
That's their relationship.
that got to read it many, many, many years later after it came out, they understand what is meant by where the
Well,
sun.
they understand what it became to mean later, but it doesn't
Yes,
mean that here.
it
So
was not meant there. Well, we don't really know how Tolkien felt.
for the Eagles, there may have been some other things going on already. Yes.
Exactly. There were definitely other things going on already. Let's just stop at that. But I want
Well, we
to
do.
recognize
He
the
does.
breadth of the metaphor,
The
right?
narrator does go into a bit about this Lord of the Eagles here, which we'll also touch on in the Thane's book. But Um, the Lord of the Eagles became in after days the king of all birds, and wore a golden crown and his 15 chieftains golden collars, made of the gold that the dwarves gave them. Bilbo never saw them again except high and far off in the battle of 5 armies. But as that comes in at the end of this tale, we will say no more about it just now. I Tolkien's given us a spoiler. But it's nothing specific, right?
We've been down this road before,
It's a
right?
tease.
This is an element of direct discourse, right?
Yeah.
This is the I'm telling you a story from the position of knowing the story. And some of you might be familiar with it, but I'm also familiarizing it with you, or familiarizing it to you from the position you're in right now, right? So we've had many examples of that, black as a top hat, lonesome as a train whistle,
Yeah.
these sorts of modern conventions where the narrator is clearly talking to somebody of a modern audience,
Hmm.
right? With anachronisms from the day of which he's talking about. But he's also projecting forward.
Yes.
And this is a thing of direct discourse that he plays with, that other novelists of his age had also played with, to varying degrees of success, because it felt like it gave him the feel, the world in a broader scope as he wanted it to be, that he got from old tales.
And this one isn't, I mean, it's not really a spoiler in the sense that it doesn't give us anything specific, but also if he does his job well, you're not going to remember he said this by the time you get to the end of the book because you're going to be in the moment of wherever the book is at the time, and you won't remember this kind of hint of something that will happen later.
Yes and no. I think that what it does, it also engages the audience with I'm going to quote John Cleese here. Wait for it, right? Like that's an engagement that he's trying to do, right? And he is using that methodology, as many other writers will continue to do.
Yeah.
Throughout. We were talking about, I noticed something today that I'm not sure if other Tolkien scholars have talked about it in the books that I've read. I may have glossed over it and not noticed it as directly as I do here. You know, Ed and I are using the Anderson annotated model. There are many models of the Hobbit that you might be using in your own reading. But if we go to the end of the section that first mentions the Carrock, we will see that the dwarves begged him not to leave. They offered him dragon gold and silver and jewels, but he would not change his mind. We shall see, he said, and I think I have earned already some of your dragon gold.
Mm-hmm.
And you have got it. Right? Then there's a space there, right? Not the next space to a next paragraph, but also there's no indent between the beginning of this next chapter. When Tolkien changes a scene in this book, and this is something that I went through after I noticed it today, and found every time he changes a scene, he doesn't indent at the beginning of the next scene.
I don't know if we can make I don't know if he has that much control over that printing.
No,
Printer convention.
but in the
that could be a
printing
printer's convention. That could
which
be a
is supposed to
convention
be
of the house.
facsimile printing.
What's that?
This is supposed to be facsimile printing, the Anderson book.
Oh, well, the way it's originally published.
Yeah.
Well, yes and no. I mean, if you want a facsimile printing, it's not because it doesn't
Of course,
adhere to the pages and that kind of thing.
Pagination, all that sort of stuff that we have problems with.
Yeah, and manuscript is different. There's no chapter divisions in his manuscript. I know he looks at the proofs, but does he really have that much control over when they indent and when they don't indent, or is that a convention of the publisher that they're going to stick to that? So
if you search for the Anderson copy, as I did today, the lack of indenting as he begins a new section is a vision. It's very mannered.
Yeah. And I don't recall what it is in the I didn't look for that in the first edition.
Yeah. I don't know either. I mean, I assume that this Anderson is supposed to be as close to the first edition, and that was a conscious choice.
But it's not close to no, it's using the later edition.
Yeah. But it's also relying on that. So I don't know. I just noticed it today, and I thought it was an interesting narratological point to bring up because it's a great device of saying scene, right? As any writer looks for whenever they're trying to create how do we get people to know that, okay, now we've moved into a different scene without having the interruption of the narrator saying scene 2.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really kind of cool. I'd never noticed that before. And of course, as we talked about before we started this, I haven't really done a big drill down and a read of this book until, you asked me to do it.
Yeah. Because what I've noticed in these breaks here, there's an extra space in between these scenes, but they are still indented in the first edition and the other editions I was looking at, but I didn't notice it in the Anderson.
Because I mean, it happens again on the next page,
Yeah.
where with Bilbo and the dwarves had plenty to think about. Like all these things are happening as separate moments and scenes.
Yeah. Well, let's back up again. Um, they're at the Carrick, which has a little cave in it too, a wholesome one, not not a nasty one like they have been in with the goblins. And and this is that part you were just saying. Gandalf says, "I always meant to see you all safe if possible over the mountains, and now by good management and good luck, I have done it." So it's almost like, all right, it did my job. Uh, this is, I don't have to do anything else. But then but he's reminding him that I'm going to leave. Uh, after all, this is not my adventure. I may look in on it again before it is all over, but in the meanwhile, I have some other pressing business to attend to. Um, Obviously, everyone's upset. The dwarves groan. Bilbo wept when he heard this. They thought maybe Gandalf would stick with them forever. And as we've seen, without Gandalf, they're all dead. Well, not Bilbo. Bilbo would have somehow gotten lucky and survived. But um, they need Gandalf. And then he just says, well, and he did. He told them this in the beginning. This is that I'm not going to go with you the whole way. And now finally, this is the moment. But I have some other pressing business to attend to, really then adds to something I've been talking about all along, is that who is this wizard and what is a wizard? And what business would they possibly have to attend to? Like, what do wizards do in the world? Um,
Other
and
than fireworks.
make fireworks. They know things. They do great smoke rings. Um, and they seem to have some kind of business. Bilbo mentions the business when he first meets him. Like, I had no idea you were still in business, meaning like the business of entertaining hobbits,
Yeah.
as if he's just some traveling performer. And but I think what gets hinted at here maybe is, well, no, I don't, nothing gets hinted at here. All I can think of is that one of his jobs is to help people on adventures. And that seems a reasonable job that a wizard in this world of the Hobbit would have.
I think that's reinforced by some stuff that we'll see towards the end of the chapter about, what good has he been for us, and some cognates that Gandalf has to some other forces in older tales, right?
Mhm.
He pushes people along the way, but he doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily, but at the same time, as we've seen so far, he shows up where he needs to show up, and he does stuff that saves the day, and he's kind of bothered by having to do so.
Yeah. It's annoying. It's getting in the way of the things that his the pressing business that he actually has.
That thing about, like, I was looking forward, and why did you come back? Why did you return? From looking back.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I got my own business here. And so as we mentioned, how the eagles and the lords of the eagles and these greater birds seem otherworldly, we also kind of get to put Gandalf in a spot. We're starting to putting him where now it's like, oh yeah, he's not really here for us, is he?
Nope, because he's going to leave. He does tell them then that they've come out some miles north than intended. We had this last time too. Although we do find out later that Gandalf's plan would not have worked
Yeah.
for how to get to the mountain. Well, we'll find out later. And then he talks about they this is when then they he talks about there is somebody that I know of who lives not far away. That somebody made the steps on the great rock-like Carrick. I believe he calls it. he says. And then they beg him to leave, and he's, well, I've earned the gold already, guys. So, you can when you get it, I'll get my share. Obviously, he's going to get his share because he's a wizard. But when they ask him, why is it called the Carrack, asked Bilbo. I love this answer. He called it the Carrack because Carrack is his word for it. He calls things like that Carracks. And this one is the Carrack because it is the only one near his home and he knows it well. Um, that is a fascinating way. Like, language is this. This is what it is, so we will call it this. And that's all through this. There's the hill, there's the mill, and later he'll start naming everything. But it's the Lonely Mountain. It's not its name in a sense. That's what you refer to it. That's what everybody calls it, though, in this. Um, and I love that simple purity of naming conventions in this book. And he's a somebody. Like, and he gives it, capitalize it. Like that's what he is. That's what I'm calling him right now. But he
Without
does have a name.
going deeper into other stuff from other source material, naming and the power of naming and language is what Tolkien is constantly writing about. And and the elves began it because they had language and they started to awaken the world.
Well, in this book, I think what's significant about it. Yeah, I know. In this book, what's significant is that Tolkien is a special, I mean, besides anything else he's created, any legendarium, he's so interested in language and what words mean and the stories behind those words. And he's okay with just the word itself. Like, this is what it is. And this word itself will tell you an entire story about it. A carrack being, a boundary or a place where you can look out from, and it has a cave. And it's almost like a natural fort in a sense. And all of that is bound up in this word. And so the somebody, Beorn, who names it, calls it that because that's what it is. And everything about it is encapsulated in that. I don't need to come up with another name for it. And that's the way he approaches language, Tolkien.
And also, let's go to this without doing too much Facebook stuff too, right? Like, he's teaching this is he's telling the story to his kids. He's using this opportunity. And I think this is so charming and so wonderful about it. Like, and in a way that Lord of the Rings is not about that, because he's, kids are older. He's not concerned with the same stuff anymore. But he's teaching them a little bit of what he does when he talks about the importance of words, and where they come from and their source material. He's teaching them stuff that he deals with on an almost daily diet of word memory, right? And in a way that is like makes them kind of understand the importance of language. And I find that continually compelling.
It is. It's not just kid stuff. It is very compelling. Yeah.
Yeah.
All righty. Or it is so compelling because it's kid stuff, because the way you can explain it to a kid is so compelling that works for anyone. Yeah. Well, now he explains who this somebody is. Before he names him, he's a very great person, and you must all be polite. Don't annoy, be careful not to annoy him because he's appalling when he is angry. But he is kind enough if humored. He gets angry easily. His name is Beorn. He is very strong, and he is a skin changer.
I'm just going to drop that here. Like, he's a skin changer.
And he's a skin changer. Bilbo doesn't know what that means. He thinks he's like a furrier, somebody deals in skins, animal skins. Oh my God, no, no, no. Don't say that to him. None of those words. He is a skin changer. He changes his skin. Sometimes he is a huge black bear. Sometimes he is a great, strong, black-haired man with huge arms and a great beard. In a sense, he's a werebear. is what he is. He turns into this animal, and then this is interesting because even Gandalf doesn't really know. He says, "I can't."
Right? This isn't Larry Talbot in the full moon. This isn't, the
Well,
whole.
yes, well, and I'll get into that, but just want to finish up what he says here because I can't tell you much more, though that ought to be enough. Yeah, that should be enough. Some say he is a bear descended from the great and ancient bears of the mountains that lived there before the giants came. Others say that he is a man descended from the first men who lived before Smaug or the other dragons came into this part of the world, and before the goblins came into the hills out of the north. I cannot say, though I fancy the last is a true tale, but he is, he is what he is because his name is Beorn, which means bear. And so that's what he is. And then also, Rob, and you talk about, yeah, he's not like a werewolf and that they're cursed. And especially because he has this curious line here, he is under no enchantment but his own. Um, and that's fascinating. That may change in the later, legendarium, but here it is. He chooses. Like no one's put a curse on him. Is what I get from that. Under no enchantment but his own, meaning it's his own way of being in the world. Is that he turns himself into a bear, um, uh, and it's not a
and,
curse. It's not a spell.
and let's parse a line, you and I, in the next paragraph, that I really love. That talks to broken reference. I'll read more of it because it's a better way of presenting it. As a bear, he ranges far and wide. I once saw him sitting all alone at the top of Carrock at night, watching the moon sinking toward the misty mountains. And I heard him growling in the tongue of bears, which apparently Gandalf knows the tongue of bears. The day will come when they will perish, and I shall go back. That is why I believe he once came from the mountain himself.
Yeah.
So can we play with that for a little bit? What that means about Beorn's origins? And we can also talk about the idea of a broken referent is something from Michael Dowd and Tom Shipley and many other people about opening up a wider world by dropping in a reference that doesn't seem that anyone can know it and
Hmm.
make it want for more.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really good example of that. Because apparently here he is on the Carrock and he's looking towards the Misty Mountains and he believes that they will be gone and he will go back where he belongs
Yeah.
after that. So is he talking about the goblins? What's he really talking about here? And how do we find a history for this character based upon what we're learning in this reference that none of us have the capability within this book
Uh-huh.
to fully understand?
Are you asking me? Because we don't know. Because that's my answer too. We
No,
don't know.
I just think this is part of the brilliance of the
Yes.
book is the idea of the broken reference, and it's set right here into this moment, and we're reading it as we're reading it, but there's we're also through the eyes of Bilbo, who couldn't understand it any better than us, right? So the idea of story and its broken references
Hmm.
make us dive deeper, make us feel like the world is bigger.
And Tolkien himself then dug deeper and then, created more about Beorn later, because he's never sat, well, and Gandalf isn't satisfied either. Gandalf says, I don't know much about him, but I do know this because I once saw him, like it's almost like he's spying on him. So Gandalf does know something, but he doesn't know everything. And
I believe Gandalf knows more than what he's telling in that little tale. I believe Gandalf knows who will be gone when he says that about what Beorn is saying.
well, earlier he referenced that, that it's the before Smaug or the other dragons and the goblins. He says the goblins who came into the hills of the north, but so that's who he assumes that he's referring to. That's what, he has just said.
So is he a displaced person?
Yeah. But it sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah.
That he was there before the goblins. So that means he's, ancient. That
Well,
that will also change as he develops this character later.
or his sires were.
Yeah. Yes. Maybe he is referring to his other beings of himself. So yeah. All righty. Well, they Gandalf now lets them know that he has a plan for meeting him, and it is a cautious approach. Um, you guys wait here. I'll call and whistle, and you come, but come in pairs. Um, and except for Bomber, who's so fat he can come alone. The unfortunate fat joke. This is Tolkien's world where, fat was still comic and you could make that kind of joke and people thought it was funny. But and Bomber wasn't paying attention to him anyway. Good for Bomber. They but to come in pairs so they don't anger him. And this harkens back to to chapter one, right? When the dwarves show up, little by little, ones and twos, and then a little, bigger group of them, as to, and I don't think it's not specified in that first chapter that Gandalf told them to do that, is it? I don't think it is. This is just the way it happens, but the effect is Bilbo is not overwhelmed by everybody showing up at once. And so he can gradually get used to this idea of this company and here it's obviously not to anger Beorn so he doesn't turn them all away. They need his hospitality and they need his help at this moment. So they have to make sure that they get those things with this cautious.
And it is Bilbo who notices as he calls it, the cleverness of Gandalf.
Yeah, he will. We'll get to that.
In presenting it that way.
Yeah. There's some horses they run into first. And horses with very intelligent faces. It reminds me of and I can't help but think of Gulliver's Travels and
Yeah.
the Hunanims, or however you would say it. Huninihims,
Yeah.
which are the intelligent horses in that, and especially because there was a Lilliputian reference in chapter one in the first editions, which he later cut out in the 1960s. But that Gandalf recognizes they've gone off to tell him of the arrival of strangers, and then they see him. Beorn is a huge man with a thick black beard and hair and great bare arms and legs with knotted muscles. He was clothed in a tunic of wool down to his knees, leaning on a large axe. He's a giant Anglo-Saxon warrior. It's what he looks like. And I love this exchange he has with Gandalf here. Ugh, here they are. They don't look dangerous. You can be off, he says to the horses. And then, who are you and what do you want? Towering tall above Gandalf. I am Gandalf. Never heard of him. He's not awed by a wizard. This isn't a big deal for Beorn. He's totally in charge of his environment. And Gandalf introduces Bilbo. This is Mr. Baggins, a hobbit of good family and an unimpeachable reputation. And again, the incongruity of this is, shouldn't be lost. That's the humor of it. It's this big guy with an axe. Who are you? And he's this very politely explaining who Bilbo is. Bilbo bowed. And then Gandalf says, I am a wizard. I have heard of you, if you have not heard of me. But perhaps you have heard of my good cousin Radagast, who lives near the southern borders of Mirkwood. Um, uh, all right.
All right.
I love how, first of all, how Gandalf also then is in charge of himself and lets Beorn know I am a wizard, and if you don't know me, I at least know who you are. So he's establishing himself. He's not subservient to Beorn in any sense in this exchange, but um, but we find out something about Gandalf. He has um, a cousin named Radagast who lives close by here. Um, but we talked before. Beorn even knows him. Oh yes, not a bad fellow as wizards go, I believe. I used to see him now and again. So he's a neighbor of Beorn, and he's Gandalf's cousin. Now, I was telling you this before we started.
Radagast and who he is thing, but I also want to. You just said something that I want to get to. How many wizards has Beorn encountered? Not a bad person as wizards go.
Yes, so wizards are a thing
Yeah.
that you can meet sometimes. That it's not just Gandalf and his cousin Radagast. There are wizards, and you can compare them. Actually,
Yeah.
there's enough of them that you could compare. Some are good, some aren't so good. Whether that means morally good or just bad at their job, I don't know. But
But much more than we're given to believe in earlier.
yes,
No.
that's the world we're in. We're in a world where there are wizards that you could encounter sometimes. Um, he's also his cousin. Now, I think it's like 10 or 11 times Tolkien uses the word cousin in this book, and every time he means someone relate. In all the other instances, he means someone related to like your, uncle or aunt's child. Like that's what he means every time he says it about Bilbo, about the dwarves. There's a few other times that it's mentioned. So I imagine that he still means that in the same way here. He's not just saying like, yeah, somebody kind of related to me in some kind of way, very general term that cousin can also be used as. He could, but I think in the light of all the other mentions in this, I think he means that it's his cousin. Like this isn't we're not talking about the kinds of wizards that he developed what they are later. This is like a family where a couple of the kids in this family became wizards. Um, Gandalf and his cousin became wizards. Um, Unlike most names in Tolkien, Radagast is uh, unknown how he came up with this name. There's many theories. There's pages on it in the history of the Hobbit trying to come up with how he came up with this name. There are historical Radagasts, but they don't seem related to him at all. Um, uh,
It also has no roots in the languages. There's no
it's
cognitive roots in Sindarin or Kenya.
Yeah, and any of the languages Tolkien had been inventing, it doesn't match up. It's not Old English. So it's an unusual name that he has come up with, and
But sounds good.
yeah, and perhaps that's it. That it sounds like a a name that he liked, and so he used it, and then it could have been trouble. It could have been I came up with this name telling the story with my kids off the top of my head, and then it stuck. And then now I've got to use it.
That's how it works with him. Yeah.
So but it doesn't usually things you can research these things and figure out the roots of, especially in names. But this one it winds up not being how we don't know. But
It also feels more Scandinavian than Germanic, which I think is interesting. I've never been able to find, like you said, source material for Radagast because it's a puzzlement. But
The closest is some kind of gothic in it or something, but
Yeah.
it's hard to figure out. And even when you figure it out, then then you kind of attach it to this. Even just in this chapter, it's just like it doesn't like that doesn't seem to be the kind of person that you're talking about. So who knows? But
And there
well,
are examples within his letters and within his discussions with his son about simply choosing names for the sound of them.
he loved the sound of words,
Yeah.
and
And then trying to retcon what that might mean in
yeah,
languages. So.
yeah. All righty. Well, Gandalf knows how to get Beorn's help. Um, you know, uh, first, because they need help or at least advice, is what he tells him. Um, and first, he doesn't bring everyone at once. Second, in this, when he's asking him, he says, "We are rather in need of help or at least advice." So he doesn't necessarily say, "We need your help." He says, "Help or advice." Like there's an alternative to what you could provide us. And then third, he mentions goblins. That, we had a rather bad time with goblins, and he knows Beorn doesn't like goblins because who does? Maybe just wargs. But and then the fourth is he says, when he asks about the goblins, he says, "Would you go, near there for me?" He says, "Well, it's a long tale." So he's drawing him in, like, well, and then it's like, well, if you insist, I'll tell it. All right, I'll tell you the story, and then he can do it gradually over time to pull Beorn in, more and more. Well, he doesn't tell the tale standing outside.
No, he does not.
And I will get to that in just a minute. First, I want to thank all of you for watching this episode. As a nonprofit organization, the Rosenbach Museum and Library depends on the generosity of friends and supporters like you to keep programs like this free and accessible to thousands of fellow biblioventurers worldwide. I hope you will consider supporting the Rosenbach and this show by donation, which you can do at our website, or by becoming a member. Membership gives you free museum admission, discounts on programs and courses, and early access to registration. You can learn more about how to become a member on our website. We have a great many programs and courses at the Rosenbach, including many online. You can still register for some of our online reading seminars. Of a special interest might be the medieval T.S. Eliot course, in which Dr. Mariel Caro will lead us through some medieval works that inspired the works of T.S. Eliot. That should be a lot of fun. And and there's a Shakespeare's Green Worlds with Sir Jonathan Bate starting soon. There's a course on called Brief Wonders, Latin American Short Fiction. And there are more. Rob Berry teaches a course for us online, a Ulysses Weekly, which has already begun. And It's a lot of fun. So we do a lot of courses where you're on in a meeting style format, where you're all on the screen together having discussions about works of literature or history sometimes as well. And there's lots of them to see online. Also, if you're looking for even more Biblioventures, our Sherlock Monthly show airs once per month, covering all the Sherlock Holmes adventures, one story at a time. All the previous seasons for that show, for Sherlock Mondays and Sherlock Monthly, and all the other Biblioventure series are on the Rosenbach's YouTube channel. We also have a Biblioventures Hobbit group page on Facebook where we talk and post about all kinds of things, and it's a lot of fun. So that's the break. All righty, we're getting to it. Beorn's Hall. It's a mead hall, everyone. Following him, they found themselves in a wide hall with a fireplace in the middle. Though it was summer, there was a wood fire burning and the smoke was rising to the blackened rafters in search of the way out through an opening in the roof. They passed through this dim hall, lit only by the fire and the hole above it, and came through another smaller door into a sort of veranda, propped on wooden posts made of single tree trunks. It faced south and was still warm and filled with the light of the westering sun which slanted into it and fell golden on the garden full of flowers that came right up to the steps. It's a mead hall with a nice porch. The porch, the veranda is something he has added. And even using a word there, veranda, which doesn't equate with what this structure is. So I like how he's kind of updating it in a sense. Um,
And
uh,
I read somewhere, and I used it in some of my other stuff in fanfic. The number of words that Tolkien used in The Hobbit that excludes it from being an appropriate children's book. And amongst them was veranda, because all would understand what a veranda was. So I was like, are you freaking kidding me,
well,
man?
in the past, people didn't limit vocabulary for children's books either. So it
Exactly.
comes out of that
All these great
tradition.
examples, just because you mentioned it, of like, you talk to children as you should talk to children of their age and for what you want for them. Um, and so, yeah, like, use the words, man. Get them to know the words.
Yeah. Well, this one is a mead hall with a veranda, but the idea of this hall that he has taken, and I'll show pictures in a minute. We have one from Tolkien Drew that's in the book, and then and a couple others. But the mead hall is the center of a community in the Anglo-Saxon world, the people that spoke Old English, and something that inspires him deeply through all this stuff. And that's the way he's exactly designed this, and it'll be that way in the illustrations too. And one of the important things about the hall of the community, the Mead Hall, is that the hospitality that must be given to the people in the community from the Lord who runs it. The hlaford is the Old English word for it, which means hlaford, loaf where the person the guardian of the giver of the loaves. So that's where we get the word Lord from. The loaf giver of the community. And there's a bond within the hall. I give to you, you give to me. And so the meal is very important in this as well. It's the symbolic of the bond between the leader and the followers. And mead and ale is, for most that's what people would have drunk. The regular people would have drunk. Lord actually would have probably had wine, because it's a higher class beverage, costs more. It's an imported good. That's what the Lord, in a large, substantial, community that had a giant hall would have had. But for everyone else, it's mead. And let's show the pictures because there's an illustration in
Great.
this text that Tolkien had made himself and that it was published with in the first editions. And here it is in the pages. And there we could see it a little better. Um, uh, this is the meal. He's got a table here, the fire in the middle. You can see there's a opening in the roof for the smoke to go out. It's very rustic, very, something you build, without being able to use stone to build. Um, and the Anglo-Saxons could not build like the Romans built. They had not developed the technology. They couldn't build roofs on houses. They couldn't do those like the Romans had done. They didn't have the ability to work with the stones the way they did. So they just kind of used those Roman ruins and as however they could use them, but on their own, they would build this way. And there was a earlier illustration that Tolkien had done of this first from a different perspective. Um, and also, he adds the color of the fire in here, which may have been why they chose not to use it for the edition because they couldn't, especially the first British edition, they didn't want to do colored pictures that cost a lot more money. But it's the
And did you see
firelight
the
and
Morgan?
Beorns.
This plate, did you see it at the Morgan?
What's that? I
Was this
think
the
I did,
original
but I can't
Morgan, which I
remember.
didn't see?
Yeah, I probably did. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's at the Morgan exhibition. That was the Tolkien exhibition that then toured.
I'm
Yeah.
curious about the scale of it because, we don't have sketchbooks from Tolkien, but it has a very sketchbook, just considering the ink line, it has a very sketchbook kind of
Mhm.
quality of the line making, you know? Um, and so I wonder if it was like an earlier plan for the drawing that he made earlier or that he made later that you just showed. Um, and then you're going to do the Gordon one next, right?
This is it. This picture that Tolkien drew was apparently inspired by, just because it looks so much like it, by this picture in a book by E.V. Gordon. It's an introduction to Old Norse, and all of these pictures are in the annotated Hobbit. And in Gordon's intro to Old Norse, E.V. Gordon's close to Tolkien. They do an edition of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight together. Tolkien helped him on putting together this, and their Norse stories in Old Norse is for learning Old Norse. And this picture in it is here you can see it a little better here. Um, was included in that edition, and it um, it turns out that it was actually well, it's the story that it illustrates is part of Hrolf Kraki's saga, which is about Bothvar Bjarki at the court of King Hrolf. Now, Bjarki means little bear, and just like the name Bjorn that we might see. Bjorn as we spell it means bear. It's Beorn. It's the same name, different spelling. But this story about Hrolf Kraki, Hrolf in the it's both far Bjarki at the court of King Hrolf. Hrolf Kraki is Hrothulf. Hrothulf in Beowulf is the nephew of Hrothgar. So the hall that's mentioned in it, and in the story they call it Hlidegarder, but it's because of the Hrothgar connection, it's probably the same hall that's in Beowulf, Heorot. So technically, because of this illustration the way it is, this is actually Heorot in Beowulf, just from another source. And what with the Beowulf associations all over this chapter, I find that fascinating. Here's side by side the two illustrations that Tolkien used, obviously for inspiration. Um,
Oh, and that intermediate one that I said might be from a sketchbook, which shows the same perspective of E.V. Gordon's, right?
yeah, yeah. The first one that he did is
Yeah.
more of this
First one
perspective
shows the
here.
exact
Even
perspective,
even up to this top right corner here, where he's put the lettering,
same angle
yeah,
of ingress. So,
yeah,
but he decided for something more isometric from a frontal angle,
yeah,
later one, right? And he moves the benches here so they're further away from the fire, which is curious, um, but um, but more economical. And Tolkien was a very economical illustrator.
yeah. Now I mentioned the Beowulf associations in this chapter. It's not the mead hall and just this place alone. Beorn himself, whose name means bear. Beowulf is bear. It's a bee's wolf. It's the wolf. It's a kenning in a sense, meaning bear. It's the bear is the animal that will wolf-like devour bees. He's the bee's wolf. The Beowulf is the bear. So he is named a bear, just as Beorn is, just as these other, stories, the Hrolf Kraki, um, the Bjarki stories are. They're stories about warriors who turn into bears and fight as bears. And so it's I love all these. This is Tolkien loving Old English, Old Norse literature and being inspired by it and finding ways to craft it anew in the works that he's writing in the 20th century. Um, uh, and I love it. So there you go. A little bit on that.
More than just a little bit.
Yeah, I'm in control of the Zoom. I can talk as long as I want. Ah, boy. And to talk about it, drinking mead, that's perfect. You know. And while the Anglo-Saxons didn't smoke pipes, why didn't they smoke pipes? Because they just hadn't discovered tobacco. They didn't have tobacco brought to them yet. If they had, they would have smoked them. Um, we get pipe smoking in this chapter as well.
Yeah.
Okay, Gandalf tells this story. Um, and as he's telling the story, the dwarves keep showing up, and it's funny every time they do, they're always at your service, and Beorn's like, I don't need your service. Stop it. Just, keep going. And then, get on with the story. But he does, and he says, I don't like dwarves. I am not over, well, he says, I am not over fond of dwarves. Um, but he recognizes Thorin, right? Or at least the name. If it is true that you are Thorin, son of Thrain, son of Thror, I believe, um, that he recognizes that name. So Beorn is knows enough of the world to recognize the names of famous dwarves. Um, come on, my Jack in the boxes, he calls them as they keep showing up. That's the kind of term that Tolkien then later kind of didn't kind of like those, right? They're anachronisms. Jack in the boxes are in the 16th century. He likes to keep his
It's
references
a
before
weird
that.
though, because it's not in the narrator's voice, right?
No, yeah, it's a character saying it. Yeah. So
First time a character actually uses a contemporary anachronism
yeah.
in the book. And so, I always like to point out those.
That they there could have been ancient ones. We just haven't found them because they were made of wood and they all
Well,
disintegrated.
they
There
probably
you
would have been made by dwarves.
go.
So,
Yes.
um,
Yes. So dwarves would have invented these things long ago.
absolutely. Their toys were magical.
Bilbo, this is what you mentioned this earlier. Bilbo kind of, assesses, after going through the whole story, um, and Beorn becoming more and more interested in the story and more entertained by dwarves showing up all through it. Um, that it always works out well. I wish I had, and he even says, I wish I had been there when he fought the goblins. I would have given them more than fireworks. Gandalf was very glad to see that his tale was making a good impression. And then at the end of that, Mr. Baggins saw then how clever Gandalf had been. The interruptions had really made Beorn more interested in the story. The story had kept him from sending the dwarves off at once, like suspicious beggars. He never invited people into his house if he could help it. He had very few friends, and they lived a good way away, and he never invited more than a couple of those to his house at a time. We get like his exact rules for entertaining. Now he had got 15 strangers sitting in his porch. So, and then they get the reward of supper. But again, this is what we know about Gandalf, his skill list in a sense, right? He knows things. He can his weaponized fireworks skill. He's a good fighter. We as he's proven with the sword, and he knows how to handle people. That is definitely a skill he has that I can get you to. It's like almost like a political skill, right? That I can manage a relationship to get what we need out of this relationship.
And Bilbo, it's Bilbo noting this. It's like we talked about. It's in
Yeah,
Bilbo's voice. Mr. Baggins saw then how clever Gandalf had been. So it's him understanding kind of a methodology of Gandalf that projects back on how the dwarves were presented, you know, in the unexpected party. And the idea that Gandalf might have done all of that in advance, but in a different methodology.
Mhm.
So it's in some ways, I think it's good because it implies Bilbo's acceptance of, oh, you've done a really good thing here, but oh yeah, you bamboozled me in the same method, didn't you? You know, and he's okay with that. He doesn't question it, but he realizes that that's the cunning of Gandalf.
Mm-hmm. Beorn can also talk to animals. Um, and there might be a little connection here with the Dr. Dolittle stories, um, in the sense that they were very popular then. Tolkien's children loved the Dr. Dolittle stories. They had all of the books. But it's actually even beyond that. You can actually do a Dr. Dolittle dive, which I'm not going to do right now, in which the world of Dr.
I
Dolittle,
wish I'd pulled up some illustrations from those early stuff.
and that he illustrated his own works. What's his name again? The author, Lofting, is it? Somebody remind me in the chat. But the uh, but the but he illustrated his own works, and also the world he set them in is very much like the Shire, this kind of, rural village, place that he lives in. And then here you have the whole, being able to communicate with animals as well. But his animals, he's got this white, beautiful, the ponies come in. Hugh Lofting, yes, thank you. Um,
Perfect.
they the white ponies come in, and then several large, long-bodied gray dogs. Beorn said something to them in a queer language, like animal noises turned into talk. Um, they carried torches in their mouths. The dogs could stand on their hind legs when they wished and carry things with their forefeet. And then there's rams and, a coal black ram and sheep, and they bring in things on their backs. So there was some. Do you want to look at those other illustrations?
Yeah. So
Talk about them.
I think a bit of what Ed likes when I come on the line is being able to talk about illustrations. And because this chapter is so ultimately Germanic, we pulled some illustrations from the German adaptations.
Yeah, these are not Tolkien illustrations.
Yeah.
They are in the German translation of the book by Engels.
This is a guy called Horace Engels who, shortly after the first edition came out, he was constantly sending letters to Tolkien about wanting to illustrate a German language edition. And Tolkien was not so favorably to his illustration style, um, mostly because he referred to it as a Disneyfication in the way he saw the characters. I sent Ed a number of illustrations from that today.
This is a different illustrator from 71.
Was Inscat, who people should look up, but that we'll also talk about. But there's a charm to the Enser illustrations. Ed, can you find the cover one, which is really good?
Yeah, hold on. Where
This
is
is
that?
Enser's dwarf music.
Engels, you mean? Yeah.
Engels, sorry, did I say Enser? Engels, dwarf music.
Here's his cover.
Bard. Here's his cover. You know what I also like us to talk about because of the way Ed set up the show is the difference of this book as being kind of a children's book and written under that auspice and understanding the charm of how we look at the characterization and the moments in it as a kind of a creepy children's book. And the Germans are great at that. They're wonderful at it. There is a charm. This illustration for the cover captures the double cover that Tolkien himself did, but it puts the characters fresh forward in a way that he would never have done, um, and makes some sort of caricatures and creates a unique, I don't know, their they're cartoonish in a way that invites children's identification without overwhelming their idea of verisimilitude and what it means, what things look like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a trick in illustration, to be able to do that. To illustrate is not the same as to illuminate like it is in cinema. It's to like lead people with a path in. His drawings are charming. They have a great space to them. They're sort of expressive in an Aubrey Beardsley kind of way without much background. But then if we go to this, the next guy that I chose from the German,
Let's do that one very quickly. I don't want to get too off chart,
yeah,
too off chance here.
which is his Claus Inskit stuff. His stuff's great, and it's menacing and foreboding.
Yeah.
This is nothing like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, right? This is a children's book. This is what children's books looked like when this book was written. And
Bilbo's got a top hat on this one. It looks like Willy Wonka down there.
Right? Yeah. And Gollum, with that noise in his throat, is definitely drawn off of a toad.
The giant toad.
Is kind of the source material that we know Tolkien was looking at.
All righty. All right. I want to jump back.
Please.
Thank you for that. They all sit and eat, and the animals bring in food. Gandalf and Thorin sit at one end, Beorn at the other, and everybody else is on these little, wooden sections of logs around the tables. And they had supper or a dinner such as they had not had since they left the last homely house in the West. Beeswax candles on the table. Beorn tells stories as they're all sitting around the fire there. Tales of the wild lands on this side of the mountains, and especially of the dark and dangerous wood that lay outstretched far to north and south, a day's ride before them, barring their way to the east, the terrible forest of Mirkwood. We'd love to, know, well, like what stories did you tell about Mirkwood? And how would you know them? Do you go into the forest? These are all things I'd like to know about him, but we don't get that information yet. The dwarves are reminded of the perils that they still have to go through still to get to the dragon and the mountain, and they begin to tell their tales of their own, but Beorn's not interested. Like that. He's like, yeah, I'm the Lord here. I don't have to listen to your stories. and he gets drowsy and he's not really interested in them. But then here we go. They sat long at the table with their wooden drinking bowls filled with mead. I've got mine in a ceramic, handmade ceramic cup here. And the dark night came on outside. The fires in the middle of the hall were built with fresh logs and the torches. And where's my mead? I went over the mead passage. Sorry. Where's my mead mention? They still sat, swags, magic or not, and the poem. Is it after the poem that mentioned the mead?
I think it is.
Oh, okay. He doesn't have to pretend to be interested, so then they start telling their own tales. Oh no, filled with mead. I just read that. They sat at the table with their wooden drinking bowls filled with mead. Right. I did just say it. And then they this is the hall that I mentioned, right? The comfort, civil, of a hall. And it's really the way this is situated here with the stories he's telling. Beorn is telling of the outside world and how dangerous it is. This is, again, a little more about this Anglo-Saxon world and the purpose of a hall within the midst of it. There's a story from the Venerable Bede, Bede. Anglo-Saxon monk, Northumbria, wrote the ecclesiastical history of the English people in Latin, Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis Anglorum. That's where we get Cadman's the story about Cadman and Cadman's Hymn, the first poem written in English. Even though Bede writes it in Latin, later people amend the text, include the Old English text. So we have it. But he tells a story in the court of King Edwin of Northumbria in the year 627, and they're debating whether or not to go Christian, whether they should convert to Christianity or remain still worship the same pagan gods that they worship and their ancestors coming from the Germanic countries worshipped. And someone gives advice to the king and his advisors, and here it is. The present life of man upon earth, O king, seems to me, in comparison with that time which is unknown to us, like to the swift flight of a sparrow through the house wherein you sit at supper in winter with your ealdormen and thanes, while the fire blazes in the midst, and the hall is warmed, but the wintry storms of rain or snow are raging abroad. The sparrow, flying in at one door and immediately out at another, whilst he is within, is safe from the wintry tempest. But after a short space of fair weather, he immediately vanishes out of your sight, passing from winter into winter again. So this life of man appears for a little while. But of what is to follow, or what went before, we know nothing at all. If therefore this new doctrine, Christianity, tells us something more certain, it seems justly to deserve to be followed. Meaning that the metaphor is we are just like the sparrow coming in the hall. We don't know where we came from before. We don't know what's going to be after. And the world itself is this hall where we're safe. That's the point of the story, is that Christ will take away the mystery of what's outside the hall, and we can feel safe knowing that we can go outside of the hall. But it's also a story, I think, that relies on the audience knowing the security, the safety, the comfort of their community and its hall amidst a wild, dangerous world. And that's what this company in this chapter is experiencing here at Beorn's Hall. They've gone through all these, dangerous things all outside it, and here they are safe in the Mead Hall. And then soon they're going to have to go out of it back into the unsafe, wild world again. So, and I think Tolkien's aware of this. Tolkien knows that story. He's aware of all this. He knows what this place means.
Yeah, it's a big thing with the Tolkien. And as I said to you before we got started, I'm glad you brought the bead. But here's the thing. You're putting it on not just dwarves, but also on Bilbo, as we're going to see when we do the dwarf song in a minute, where he gets more information than he probably would have signed up for. But what do we do with Beorn in that? Because he seems to know who Thorin is. He seems to know many great things beyond his own hall. Right? He's a little bit more. He's not omniscient in the way that we look for Gandalf, but he's a little bit more aware of the rest of the world and the struggles beyond his hall. So he protects and guards the borders of that hall, and he protects the dwarves as they're in there in the same way that the bead metaphor does, right? But he's willfully pagan and doesn't really care about all these other elements, He knows about them.
Yeah.
But
well, and we'll get to a little more on Beorn in a little bit when he's snuffling around outside. But first, let's do the dwarf song. Sitting around the fire, drinking mead, singing songs. Like, this is the life, right? This is where I want to be. Why is this my favorite chapter? Here you go. This is why. So,
but the song is more dangerous now.
Yes, it is. It's a lot like their first song, the Over the Misty Mountains, Cold Song, in at least structure. The way it's structured, is the same. But the subject of it is clearly more dangerous in a sense, more creepy. It's almost like a lament, in theme, the way it goes through. Um, uh, and I love that it's got alliteration in every line, but then the third line, there's an internal rhyme in it.
Yeah, the mid rhyme line is
Yeah.
is nice. It's
The third line of each stanza has an internal rhyme. It's their
it's
shadows lay by night and day, the branches groan, the forest moaned, but shrill and harsh across the marsh. And and then there's also some end rhymes on the end ones, but that internal rhyme within there is but the rest of them, it's the alliteration because it's inspired by Old English poetry. The wind was on the withered heath. Um, uh, the forest, well, I guess the leaf at the end. You can't always be perfect with these with these kinds of things.
no, Heath and Leaf is fine. Um,
but then
nice.
the, but then no, I'm talking about the alliteration, the
We have
roared and
readings of
rolled
Tolkien in
and
his
leaves were laid
accent. Yeah.
and wind went on from wind and west. And these are the alliterative rhymes that happen, or the alliteration that happens, not rhymes, that happens in Old English poetry. They don't rhyme words, they use alliteration to connect words together.
He uses a rhyme scheme that's both seems simplistic but is entirely complex. Also, the count of syllables and the stresses are really great. But that middle language is really important. And of course, for people that are interested in going there, on the chat or want to put that in, um, Tolkien read in his Midland dialect these poems, and you can kind of hear his cadence to
Did he
them.
do this one? I don't remember
Not
this.
this one.
No, I don't think he
He
did.
did the earlier one for sure.
Yeah.
You know, you know, but his cadence really helps. It passed the lonely mountains here and swept above the dragon's lair. The black and dark laid borders stark, and frying smoke was in the air. Right, and that really helps inform it. You can actually listen to these,
Hmm.
um, and I think that's fantastic. But what you and I wanted to talk about at this is like, shit, this is a much deeper cut version of what Bilbo experienced that made him get on the road in the first place. This is some dangerous shit.
Yeah, this is
Dragon
it's a
described.
creepy world. It's a dangerous world. It's the kind of threats that lie beneath, that the wind is stirring up. Um, Nature and the wind and the natural world is not comforting. It's not welcoming. Um, but also in the bigger scheme of this, it's okay to sing this while they are safe in the hall, protected from the bleak wind out there.
But
Um,
they're telling Bilbo something that he hadn't really kind of
yeah.
considered so deeply before. He was caught into the magic of their song and their struggle and their plight. And now
Although
it's like, oh shit, we're gonna get real.
although both songs do mention the dragon then at
They
the end.
do.
And like this is, the first song was about the dragon first coming and destroying them. This is about we're off in this dangerous world and we have to go to the dragon.
Yeah. It's a deeper plight that he's being given here.
And this last stanza, it left the world, the wind, it left the world and took its flight over the wide seas of the night. The moon set sail upon the gale, and stars were fanned to leaping light.
Yeah. Where are you going with that?
It just the finish of this kind of night sky, like is like the seas, the wide seas of the night, and the moon is like a ship sailing. There's this beautiful imagery, but this last line here, and stars were fanned to leaping light. Is it hopeful? Is it the stars leap into light? Is that a hopeful image I'm getting? I don't
If,
know.
if we were mentioning this and talking about it in the Thanes book, I would talk about Earendil the Mariner,
Yeah.
which I
Well,
think
we can at the end, which he has already invented. So
totally echoes,
yeah, and
right?
it's not the Facebook. It's like it's influential, and you can talk about it here because this is an idea that he has been working on, and now he incorporates here in some interesting way. Um, that this Earendil star up there in the sky, which then he takes that word and that idea, and then creates a whole mythology around, is a hopeful symbol.
Uh-huh.
So is that what's going on here, do you think? That that's what he means? Or he's hinting at that? The stars were fanned into leaping light? I don't know.
I think that this really desperate moment where they're like going, they're kind of also telling, this is like the deep cut version of the earlier song where they're kind of telling Bilbo more of the danger he's about to face as they go into it together. But they're here in a hall that's lit and they can maybe do that differently. And they don't want to just like put out an ad for a burglar. Now they want to actually say, well, that's what we're really going to do.
First time they were like, sing the song, but don't sing these verses.
Exactly. Yeah. That they stop with that last stanza in a way that kind of uniquely opens up to some of the other things that Tolkien has already written about stars and hopefulness, right? I don't think there's a direct intention of Earendel here. And certainly it would be unusual if we were in the Thanes book to talk about why the dwarves would even mention him. But it's there within the legendarium.
Mm-hmm.
It's there within the belief that stars are hopeful. It's beautiful. It's a much more, in some ways, it's my favorite verses of the song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Gandalf tells them afterwards, in this hall we can rest sound and safe. This is something I've been talking about. But I warn you all not to forget what Beorn said before he left us. You must not stray outside until the sun is up on your peril. And we will find out why in a second as they all go to bed here. Also, that they're all sleeping in the hall, and this reminds me of Beowulf and his companions and Hera.
Uh-huh.
They're all
Yeah.
sleeping at night, in the hall. And outside, Bilbo hears a growling sound, a noise as of some great animal scuffling at the door. And whether it could be Beorn in enchanted shape, and if he would come in as a bear and kill them, he doesn't know. And it seems pretty say like it's Beorn outside as a bear, lurking outside. Um, and we'll find out what happened in a moment. In the morning, Bilbo almost misses breakfast. Good God, for a hobbit. That's no good. Beorn and Gandalf are gone. Gandalf returns at sunset, but not Beorn. And then we get and then we get, mead. Gandalf drank at least a quart of mead and then took out his pipe. So, yes, you wonder why this is my favorite chapter. Um, and then blows his smoke rings. I have been working on my smoke rings. I have not gotten them down yet. I was hoping I might get them down finally by this chapter, but I don't think so. I'm going to try one right now.
Getting there. There are a few good ones.
There were a couple good ones in there. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm working on it, everybody. Although Gandalf sends smoke rings dodging around the pillars of the hall, changing them to all sorts of different shapes and colors, and setting them at last chasing one another out of the hole in the roof. They must have looked very queer from outside, popping out into the air one after another, green, blue, red, silver gray, yellow, white, big ones, little ones dodging through the big ones and joining into figure eights and going off like a flock of birds in the distance. These are
I love that.
magic. These are magical smoke rings. This is like, it's not like the fireworks thing. It's not like the bombs he kind of throws at the goblins or at the wargs, where it's you can kind of explain it in a way that like, well, he's kind of taking gunpowder and adding things that they do to make fireworks in different colors. This is different. This is magical. He is defying the laws of physics in some kind of way. And we don't know how he does it. They don't know how he does it, but it doesn't matter because it's a wizard and a wizard can do this. So this is part of his things. He knows things. He's a good fighter, weaponized fireworks, can handle people, and he's a smoke ring artist. But it hints at a deeper thing going on, that there is a magic going on because nothing else so far about him has said actual defying the laws of the of physics and the world magic. And this does though.
I'm gonna pick up at the beginning of the next chapter or paragraph because it's really something I know we want to talk about. I've been picking out bear tracks, he said at last. There must have been a regular bears meeting outside here last night. I soon saw that Beorn could not have made them all. There were far too many of them, and they were of various sizes, too. I should say there were little bears, large bears, ordinary bears, and gigantic big bears, all dancing outside from dark to nearly dawn. They came from almost every direction, except for the west over the river from the mountains. In that direction, only one set of footprints led. None coming, only ones going away from here. So
We missed a
he
bear dance. There was a bear dance.
was a fucking bear ceremony. What do we fucking do about the goblins, right? It's great. I love it. Oh shit, I might be swearing too much for this
There
podcast.
you go. So,
Um,
um, but the bears are dancing out there at night, and that's what, oh, at least what the tracks say. And then little bears, large bears, ordinary bears. Beorn goes to, and the one track goes, and that's Beorn, right? And we'll learn later what he learns about all this stuff. But the big question here is, are they other bears? Like meaning just the animal, or are they other Beorns? Beornings, maybe, as what later will happen in the legendarium. But because I, I think what he's getting at here in this chapter, I think it's Beorn can commune with the actual bears. And so he has them together there. But we don't 100% know. We all know that he can turn into a bear. So why couldn't they be people who turn into bears? Right?
it is a thing.
Yeah.
We will not know.
Well,
Um,
Bilbo dreams of this. He dreams of hundreds of black bears dancing in the moonlight, and then wakes up and then hears them again outside, um, uh, or at least one of them outside. And then the next morning, Beorn himself wakes him up, picks him up, um, uh, seems to know what he's been thinking, right? Not eaten up by wargs or goblins or wicked bears yet, I see. Um, and little bunny, he calls him, there's the rabbit there, right? Have some more. And then he's very jolly for a change. Um, he can uh, he can travel quickly in bear shape at any rate. So he followed their path all the way up to the where they were trapped by the wargs and the goblins in the tree. And then he captures a warg and a goblin in the woods, and he finds out that at least the story that they told, part of it was true. They're still hunting them because they killed the great goblin, and then he so much they told him when he forced them, meaning he tortured them.
Mhm.
He tortured them to tell him to get the information, and then you know, they and he's very happy
Can
about
I
this.
read this part? What did you do with the goblins and the orcs? Asked Bilbo suddenly. Come and see, said Beorn, and they followed around the house. A goblin's head was stuck outside the gate, and a warg skin was nailed to a tree just beyond.
He's very happy he's done
Beorn
that.
was a fierce enemy.
Yeah, yeah,
That is, yeah, borderline children's, like very scary children's book material,
yeah,
right? That we would not do in today's world, but certainly exists within the realm of the Brothers Grimm and all the
yeah.
other, you know.
The beheaded goblin on a spike at the gate, and the skin, nailed to a tree. Yeah,
And
that's
the excited exclamation point, oh, come and see. I'm really happy about this.
yeah. Um, he and he also well, now he's now oh, he also hints that if you live near the edge of Mirkwood, you would take the word of no one that you did not know as well as your brother or better. And this is why he's explaining that he had to find out the truth of this, and why I had to torture this, goblin and warg. But that, and again, we've had several hints and assertions that Mirkwood is not a pleasant place. It is, as its name suggests, too. And it's actually a name from Mirkwood. It's from Old English, and Tolkien in a letter. This is in the annotated, but um, he wrote it to his grandson Michael, not his son Michael, about this. About the word and where it came from. It's very early German. Merkowidu. The stem Merk is dark. Widu is in German and also meant timber. And this is a word that had been used for these forests in ancient days, and he has taken this word and used it. But also, more importantly, William Morris used it, Mirkwood, in The Tale of the House of the Wolfings. So, and Tolkien is very inspired by Morris's Roots of Heaven and House of the Wolfings in this, which are this kind of fantasy Anglo-Saxon world that he has created without magic. There's not really any magic in Morris, but that's where he's gotten it from. So anyway, Beorn will provide them now ponies, um, and a horse for Gandalf, and food, and gives them all this. Although no mead, what a bummer! Like he doesn't give them some jars of mead. Come on, that's what I would be. And bows and arrows. I'd be like, keep the bows and arrows, give me the mead. And he tells them to beware of the stream. There's one stream that is black and strong, which crosses the path. That you should neither drink of nor bathe in, for I've heard that it carries enchantment and a great drowsiness and forgetfulness. And also, straying from the path, that you must not do for any reason. Stay on the bed. Stay on the road. Keep clear of the moors. Not inappropriate in a chapter about a werebear, okay? Uh,
Yep.
Stay on the road, keep clear of the moors. And then he tells them, he reroutes their path because Gandalf originally was going to go south, which on the map of Mirkwood, of Wilderland, looked like there was a forest road through there. And Beorn says, no, you can't take that path. You have to take the other path. Um, his advice, we were no longer making for the main forest road to the south of his land. He warned them that that way was now often used by the goblins, while the forest road itself, he had heard, was overgrown and disused at the eastern end and led to impassable marshes where the paths had long been lost. So he directs them to the gate of a little known pathway through Mirkwood that led almost straight towards the Lonely Mountain. And if you look on your map of Wilderland, it's the elf path through there. So that's where he's told them to go to. And we can, quickly finish, at least this chapter before the Thane's book. They takes them 4 days. Bilbo sees at night the shadowy form of a great bear prowling along. So he's kind of following them there along their way. Um, and and they come up to the forest, and I like that as soon as it was light, they could see the forest coming, as it were, to meet them or waiting for them, like a black and frowning wall before them. It's like a forbidding wall, this forest that they come up to. It's not gradually, there's more trees. No, it's like space, and then Mirkwood is right there. And the birds began to sing less. There's no more deer. There's not even rabbits. This place is not welcoming to you.
I also want to point out there that when Gandalf is about to leave and says, you should send the ponies back.
Yes.
But he's like, I'm going to take the horse. And I'm like, wait, what?
Oh, wait. Oh, we'll get to that because he tells him this. Yes. He says he's leaving. He's not far away. So you better send the ponies back because Mr. Baggins saw him. He's not just following to make sure we get here. He's making sure you send his ponies back. He may be your friend, but he loves his animals as his children, right? And then he says he's not sending the horse back. I am going to go back, myself and deliver it myself. As have I told you, some pressing business away south. He's already late through bothering with you people. We may meet again before all is over. And then again, of course, we may not. It depends on your luck and on your courage and sense. And that's why I'm sending Mr. Baggins with you. I've told you before, he has more about him than you can guess, and you will find that out before long. So, first, pressing business.
Let's do that.
What is he? Now, there's a different answer for this when we get to the Thane's book, but he's, as he's writing this story, he's created this wizard who has business elsewhere. Is that helping people on adventures like he's doing here? Does he have somebody else out? He's mentioned his cousin. He's got a cousin who lives near here. Maybe his business is with Radagast, who lives nearby. We don't get an answer, and I think that's part of it here, is that these characters themselves don't have an answer. And Tolkien has created this character here who will go off at times and will tell you that he has something to do, but this is part of what wizards are. Wizards are people who you won't know everything about. They are mysterious in what they go about to do.
And can we spend a second on that? I know we're, getting late, but on the narratology of who's writing this, what the perspective is. And, a lot of the belief is the notion that this story of the Hobbit, contained within the other stories that we have, without getting too big on the Thane's book, is the story as Bilbo told it to the younger hobbits. So just in the same way that it's the way that Tolkien told it to his children.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's not really written with the notion of all the deeper connections that Tolkien will retcon into it when he brings back, its connection in the Lord of the Rings. It's supposed to stand by itself, but he makes some changes within what occurs without actually changing the language of how he approaches it to people. So he's not really going to take a moment here, as somebody else might if it was the Lord of the Rings, and go on a diatribe about what Gandalf's business was in the South.
And
right?
he could have later when he
That
revised,
would be a hard choice.
he
And
revised
he
Rivers of the
actually thought
Dark.
about that.
He could
Yeah,
have revised this too, but he doesn't
yeah.
because that's not. Oh, it's also not the perspective, and it also would change this idea that he has in this book, especially that these characters don't know what Gandalf does. They don't know what his business is, really. They just get hints at it, and it's always this mysterious thing he has to go off and do. And it's really annoying that you have to bother me and I can't get to do the business that I want to do.
Right. So within the narratology and the like weird pamphlet set that the Lord of the Rings becomes, through its many source materials later, we're kind of led to believe that, and I think this is important, that this is what Bilbo, the story that Bilbo told to Frodo and Sam and Merry
Mhm.
Pippin as they were growing up. And that later, when more stuff came up in the Red Book of Westmark, they didn't want to change that. So it has its own standalone kind of lane.
Yeah.
You know, they don't want to alter it, but they want to let it be as charming as when they first encountered it.
And I like how strong Tolkien remains committed to this idea of luck, and that luck is enormously important in this adventure and in adventures in general, I think, as he's telling these. And something that modern storytellers will get away from. We don't want too much luck, too much coincidence, but storytellers in up through the 19th century and up until this, that it's fine. It's okay. It's coincidence and luck is what happens, and that is, it adds a kind of pattern to the story that you can really see, and that's what he's putting in here, that
Well, it's
Bilbo
a
is,
generation
and
of writers.
Bilbo is the luck. um
In a generation of writers just prior to Tolkien, you know, luck is the factor that breaks class.
yeah,
You know, if Pip hadn't encountered the prisoner, you know, and helped him, he would never have
oh
changed
yeah,
from his
yeah,
expectations, right? Like this
yeah.
is what
Dickens is full of the all the the
exactly.
things,
So
everybody, and there's a point in the Dickens is that everybody is connected in some way, you just don't know it.
exactly.
Yeah,
And luck is often the governing
yeah.
force of success, right? So
And Bilbo turns up as luck and has already been the lucky character in this, and he seems to be that's what they're going to need through this. Well, they say goodbye to their ponies, and then Gandalf, and then Bilbo first goes inside the forest, like just a little bit, and it seems, creepy and dangerous. It seemed as dark in there in the morning as at night, and very secret, a sort of watching and waiting feeling, he said to himself. Um, Gandalf warns them, his last advice, don't stray off the track. Um, and if you do, well, I don't suppose I or anyone else will ever see you again. Um,
just say,
very
yeah,
thanks for the encouragement here. um, he says, you must either go through, and Bilbo's like, can't we go around this? He's like, no, you can't. You have to go through or give up the quest. I'm ashamed of you for even thinking that. And Bilbo's like, no, no, I just meant, can't we go another way? And Gandalf says, no, that if you go too far north, slopes of the Gray Mountains, they are simply stiff with goblins, hobgoblins, and orcs. Well, we've talked about this before, how orcs and goblins are the same thing, but he does seem to have some kind of idea that they might be at least different in some ways here in this Hobbit text. There's goblins, there's hobgoblins, there's orcs, as if they're kind of different species or a different kind of subsection of. But but it is true that later, and he says so later too, that they're the same thing. It just, but this is the only time in this book that he uses the word orc. Except for Orcrist, the sword. This is the only time that he uses the word orc in this book. So What we can make of it, we don't know because he never defines these as specific creatures all throughout it. Um, you can fans have made and scholars have made differences. You can say goblins are more this and orcs are more this, but it's really difficult because he virtually abandons goblin when he gets to Lord of the Rings and only wants to use orc. Also, the south in the Mirkwood is the land of the necromancer. And even you, Bilbo, won't need me to tell you tales of the Black Sorcerer, because Bilbo's heard tales of the Black Sorcerer. I don't advise you to go anywhere near the places overlooked by his dark tower. Um, Child roll into the dark tower came. I think of that Browning poem. Inspired by a famous painting of that, called that. They and with a tremendous slice of luck, oh, keep your spirits up, and with a tremendous slice of luck, you may come out one day. Um, maybe the necromancer in the set, maybe that's the business, because it's a possibility here. We'll talk about it in Thane's book, but there's a possibility that that could be something he's talking about. I like this, Rob. Do you know that in the original manuscript, it wasn't keep your spirits up, but it was keep your peckers up?
I did not know that.
Keep your peckers up, which doesn't mean what you would think it would mean today.
No, it does. It does. It was
It,
just different
no,
colloquialism at that
no,
time.
yeah, but with the colloquialism, it becomes from your pecker would be the thing you peck with, which is your mouth, your
Yeah,
nose,
yeah.
and it's keep that up. Like in the face of adversity, you keep your pecker up, but no, now it means something different. But he did change it. Keep your spirits. He didn't want it that colloquial. That would sound kind of weird, I think, coming out of Gandalf. Little too much of a Britishism.
And particularly in a children's book.
Yeah. So his final speech: stay on the path, keep up your spirits, hope for the best. With luck, you might succeed. And not very inspiring pep talk. And Thorin notices that and says, very comforting you are, to be sure, growled Thorin. So Gandalf is not there to inspire people to do great things. That's not what he does in The Hobbit. What he does is says, all this stuff is horrible and you have to go through it. Hope you're lucky enough to survive. That is not inspirational. That is stoic. That is, you must go through and face the danger and get through to the other side.
Can we go to the Thane's book on that?
No, well, we will in a minute, but I think
That's a
that
good
we can
comment.
argue about it then because I think it is a key difference in this text is that Gandalf is not an inspirational leader. He is the kind of leader that lays out every single time here he's done it. He lays out how awful everything is, and we must go on. You know what that is? That's World War II. Keep your spirits up. You have to soldier on through all the darkness. That's what, I mean, it's not World War
World
II.
War One.
Yeah, and it's that whole British thing that happens through both of those wars. You've got to keep moving on. You've got to keep surviving, even though things are dark. That's not like necessarily inspiring. That's acknowledging how awful things are, and you have to just get through it. That's different. Anyway, we'll talk about that in the Thane's book. Goodbye then, and really goodbye, said Gandalf. You could take that as you want. That's not happy. And then don't leave the path. Well, and now they say he galloped away. Oh, goodbye and go away, grunted the dwarves, really filled with dismay at losing him. He has not inspired them with any kind of hope whatsoever. Um, and now began the most dangerous part of all the journey. They each shouldered the heavy pack and the water skin, which was their share, and turned from the light that lay on the lands outside and plunged into the forest. The most dangerous part of all the journey, it says. If you thought what was already bad happened, now, now you'll see what could be bad about
Which is an excellent way to end a chapter.
it. It's a great way to end the chapter. And again, don't leave the path. Like, what do you think's gonna happen? How many times do you have to be told, don't leave the path? I think any kid in the world is going to recognize they're going to leave the path.
Right. Absolutely. They're told not to, and so they will.
All righty. Well, let's get to the Thane's book, and there's a few things. But do you want to hit this? What I just dropped. So if people don't want to know about Lord of the Rings and the connections and different stuff that this then inspired, you can mute and then listen to me say goodbye. Um, but I Gandalf is so much the inspirational figure all throughout Lord of the Rings, providing people hope when they most need it. And in The Hobbit, all he does is say, "Yeah, things suck, and you just got to deal with it. Sorry."
Gandalf is a ring bearer.
Not in The Hobbit, he's not. He
Wait,
is not in this book. He is
this
Tolkien did not conceive of that. Later, if you want to retcon it, then you could say, yeah. But that's what bothers me about this.
He bears the ring.
Yes.
We're in the Thane's book already.
He has a ring. The ring, which one is it? The one that inspires hope in people, the fire ring, right?
Ring of fire that inspires fire and hope and laughter.
And so what should be happening is he should be inspiring them all through here, and he doesn't. They grumble and growl because he hasn't really given them any hope. And had he truly retconned it, and I'm glad he didn't, had he truly retconned it, he would have had more inspirational speeches, and they would have found hope in the things that he had said as they were facing each danger that enabled them to go through the next.
Just as he does in Lord of the Rings.
Yes, but he doesn't do it here because that's not the character he is here. The wizard Gandalf.
But he has been given that ring at this point in his life.
But in The Hobbit, when it was first written, that's not the kind of character Gandalf was.
No, he hadn't come to that, and he hadn't put it back in. And so when Gandalf becomes a ring bearer, which actually happens much later in the generation of the Lord of the Rings, he'd been given it in the year 1000 of the Third Age. Gave him the ring, so he's already got it, right?
Oh, and for those who don't know, there are 3 rings of power that the elves have, and this is the whole Rings of Power series that's part of the series that
Yeah, stay away from that. Go to the.
But it is. There are 3 rings of power that the elves made that they learned how to make by Sauron teaching them how to make rings of power, but he never touched these rings, so they're not evil. And the elves use them to create the magic of their world and to preserve their world and longevity. One of them inspires hope. And Gandalf is actually the bearer of that ring, which you don't know through all Lord of the Rings. This is a big spoiler because you don't know it. You don't know until the appendices after Lord of the Rings is over to find out that, oh my gosh, he had one of those elven rings. And it explains a lot. And Tolkien knows that going through Lord of the Rings that it will contribute to that. But he didn't retcon The Hobbit enough to make that a real thing in this book. So if you're just reading The Hobbit and never read any Lord of the Rings, the kind of character Gandalf is a stoic, you've just got to keep calm and carry on kind of, character.
Anderson, in his annotations at the end of this chapter, and I mentioned this earlier in chats, talks about Gandalf's actions of hobbits are similar to those attributed to the legendary mountain spirit.
Yeah.
On Reisengeberg,
the
mountain in Central Europe, where they basically go, hey, follow me, come here. That's what you're going to do. And I'm just going to leave there and then walk away.
These mountain spirits, yeah.
Yeah.
He's far closer to that in this book than he is the inspiration.
Way closer to that.
Leader, yeah.
But it's also a method of inspiration when it's used in these other tales. He has inspired and found a way to make Bilbo leave his comfortable house and go on this adventure. Dwarves, whatever they're doing, isn't really part of what he's concerned about, but he's kind of following a different lead. And I would argue that they're not incompatible with one another. I think he's there to inspire Bilbo, even if he's not entirely certain of the why yet. And that, if we're in the Thane's book and we're talking about it, and we're talking about the adventure of Erebor, then he kind of was already on the path. He kind of knew that Bilbo was something that he had to inspire.
Got a funny way of inspiring, let me tell you.
Oh yeah, the idea of like, don't stray from the path or you'll die. See ya. It's not very inspirational.
But it forces characters to do what they want to do. And that's not inspiring, is when you force people to do something. They don't have a choice. And he lets them know you don't have a choice. And Bilbo doesn't have a choice. He's now on the adventure. There's no going back home now. And Bilbo knows that. And Bilbo has grown already.
Yeah. But of course, also, tied up in this is that the Astari are not able to force anybody to do anything. They appear as advisor, specifically so that all they can do is say, yeah, maybe you kind of want to think about doing this. So,
do you want to talk about Radagast and who he becomes and how, he takes this? I love how he takes this. Do you want to? I'm saying yes, we're doing it. He takes this character, Radagast. It's just like a cousin of Gandalf, who's also a wizard and a good one, according to Beorn. And he really, he doesn't completely develop him into this full character, but he gives them a whole backstory and other things to do. Um, uh, and That he's a friend of birds and beasts. He knows herb lore. He's a kind of wizard who's interested in that stuff. Um,
Radagast is developed almost exclusively in the appendices. There's really only a one meeting in the Lord of the Rings.
well, it's not even, you get the story of it. Like, it's like somebody tells the story.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like he doesn't even appear himself live. It's somebody tells about running into him, and he has a story to tell.
So he's this really unusual character in
Yeah.
there.
But he gives him a specific role as the kind of wizard he is. Like Gandalf is the kind of wizard that he is in Lord of the Rings and the powers that he has. And he also, Gandalf works with elves and men, the peoples of the Middle Earth is Gandalf's concern, and Radagast's concern are animals and
We
birds.
do learn through the appendices that all 5 Astari were sent back on a mission, and they were sent back in the guise of elderly men,
Yeah.
that they could be advisors rather than a power against Sauron.
But very little guidance of what their powers would be or what they could do. And
and so the cousin thing that you noted earlier is interesting because in a pantheon, are they cousins?
Tolkien says, I called him a cousin, so now I can make him a cousin in the sense that he's an Astari, and they're all related in that way, at least, right?
So we really don't know much about that.
Yeah.
But his purposes are undetermined, and really he gets a kind of he's interesting. He's like a Midland character that, unlike the Blue Wizards, which were said to have come over and nothing ever happened that we know about, that Tolkien never wrote on and answered some questions about, but nothing with any seriousness. He stands in a middle ground, and he doesn't seem engaged in the kind of methods forward that both Gandalf and Saruman.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but of course, they're concerned with these peoples of Middle Earth, and that's where we get the story, like the whole, all these the stories being told that are in the Thane's book. Maybe Radagast is just as important in the animal kingdom, but nobody's writing about it because he's also alone out there doing it. Maybe he's constantly shepherding animals, away from danger and helping them and doing this kind of stuff, but we don't
Some
see that.
suggestion in History of Middle Earth that Radagast visited Middle Earth more often than the other Istari did before everybody was sent over,
Mm-hmm.
and that he had friendships not just with the animals, but with the middle people, not the Numenorians.
Yeah.
And that his name might come from that. That like the Pupil men
Yeah.
and so the Entwives, he gave
Yeah.
gifts to them, and cared more about them than he did about the elves and the Numenorians.
Yeah. That would make sense to, for how he's then why he is kind of forgotten and out of the loop later is because he was concerned with more the ancient peoples and not the ones that are there now. Yeah.
It's also a suggestion about the origins of his name,
Yeah.
as I mentioned earlier. Like, we don't really know where that comes from, but it could come from a Gothic name.
Yeah. One more thing I want to hit Facebook before we go, and that is the whole idea of his Gandalf's pressing business south, because this he does develop, right? And what is his business south at this particular time, Rob?
Yeah, the necromancer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's the necromancer, and where does he come into play? Because Tolkien does not rewrite that aspect.
Yeah. He takes it and uses it. Yes.
Aware that the necromancer thing is big, he's going to use it later, but he doesn't rewrite it as being Sauron making back into Middle Earth. Yeah.
That actually what he retcons this into is that Gandalf is trying to find out if the necromancer is Sauron.
That's the goal.
Yeah. So
Right.
that is important. That is important pressing business. I have to know this.
All right. This has been great. Are we good or anything else? Questions?
That's it. Wes Thuhal, and thanks for joining us for episode 6 of Biblioventures The Hobbit. Rob, thank you for joining. You will return. You'll return in a few weeks. Thank you, Brianna, our chat assistant, for providing links in the chat. Next week for episode 7, we will cover chapter 8, Flies and Spiders, as Bilbo and the dwarves make their way through Mirkwood. Of course, they won't stray from the path, right? Graham Cheadle will return as co-host. Thank you to all of you who have made a donation to the Roseback or become a member. We couldn't do these shows without your generous support. Your donations help us create more programs like this and also care for our collections. You could also become a member. Membership gives you early access and discounts to programs and courses. You can find out more at our website, rosenbach.org. Thanks to the Wincoat Foundation. Thank you all for watching this series. Spread the word. I am Edward G. Pettit of the Rosenbach Museum and Library, hoping that all your smoke rings will be colorful. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.